Well, you know, the target of my ire, my subject is always the media, because I think, in my opinion, and in my experience, the problems we have here could all be solved if we had an actual, true, honest media. But we don't. And I've said for a long time now, probably the past 10 years, you've probably seen it too, at least according to the ratings, the worst media is sports media. But here's an issue that's kind of gone from sports media and it's weaseled its way into all kinds of media and it won't let go. I'm talking about Jaxson Dart, quarterback of the New York Giants, high-profile position. I mean, if you're a quarterback of the Giants in that market, you are a public personality. That is for sure. Well, he dared make the mistake after being invited, and that's an important part of the story here. Keep that in mind. Just hold that in the back of your head for a second. He was invited by the Trump administration to introduce President Trump at the rally in New York last week. The controversy that this caused. Now, one of his teammates had a problem with this, but this was cleared up the day after. There's no problem in the locker room. There's another important part of the story. It was cleared up almost immediately. But even now, a week later, the media will not let it go. Now, you could call this, well, it's maybe because it's a slow offseason for the NFL. We're past the draft. We're really not into a preseason yet. It's something more than that, though. There's a reason why they won't let it go, and we'll get into it. Anyway, thanks for being here. Appreciate you, as always. Thank you, as always, audio podcast listeners, posted right after the live stream at 9 a.m.-ish. And there have been a lot more of you finding it wherever you like to get your audio podcasts. Also, the live stream, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on X and YouTube and Facebook, and then the replay. But let's get into it. Now, we got to go back a little bit because, again, this is a story that they will not let go. They keep giving it life and pouring, C4 on the flames. And this was Jaxson Dart introducing President Trump at his rally in New York a few days ago. Again, this is really important. At the invite, at the request of the Trump administration, regardless of how he feels about politics. And it sounded like this.
I'm grateful, I'm honored, I'm pleasured to introduce the 45th and 47th President of the United States of America, President Donald J. Trump.
And then here Lee Greenwood and the standard Trump intro and all that good stuff. Okay, that's what happened. A great event, big rally, huge crowd, as it always is. Well, this is what kicked it all off. His teammate, Abdul Carter, linebacker, or edge defender? I don't know. Defensive player, Abdul Carter, another big name in a massive market with an historically important NFL team, the New York Giants. He posts on social media, man, I thought that blank was AI when I saw it. What are we doing here? That's all he said, right? That was his reaction. Not that bad, but he seemed to not be too happy that his quarterback was introducing President Trump. That's fine. Now understand, this was cleared up a day after. He posted again and he said, and this is in the locker room because they all love to push this narrative. He's dividing the locker room. How dare you introduce Trump? You have to be more aware than that, which you'll hear here in a second. This was cleared up with his buddy, his friend, and teammate, Abdul Carter, by the next day, within 24 hours, maybe even sooner than that, okay? So that's not even the issue. But for Abdul Carter to even say that, right? Abdul Carter has gone on to say that another Giants great defender, a linebacker, Lawrence Taylor, is his hero, his idol, his favorite player to watch. Well, here's Lawrence Taylor introducing Trump a couple of years ago.
I grew up a Democrat, and I've always been a Democrat. Until I met this man right here. I'll tell you what. He the wolf.
I don't remember the controversy at the time. Maybe a little bit. Maybe some people were surprised at Lawrence Taylor doing that. That was during a campaign event, but no controversy. First question you should ask is why? Why so? Why not? All right. Well, that started the media firestorm. Despite the fact that Abdul Carter goes on, he says, me and Jax are all good, we're all fine, it's all fine, the locker room not divided, we're fine, whatever, we're all good, right? No, the media and the sports media was just getting started. Oh, they were just beginning. All kinds of takes like this. Here's Emmanuel Acho, I believe his name is. He played about, 20 games in the NFL? But he's got to tell you exactly why this was such a bad thing, and it wasn't full of wisdom.
All right, it's time to have an uncomfortable conversation about what the hell is going on in New York. Jaxson Dart, the quarterback, supporting President Donald Trump? He's allowed to do that. He's a citizen. He's allowed to have a freedom of thought. Abdul Carter, first-round pick, his teammate calling him out. He's allowed to do that. If Jaxson Dart's allowed to support Donald Trump, then his teammate is allowed to support his grievances with him doing that. Here is my issue. Jaxson Dart, you know how several of your brothers, your teammates, your friends, your ride or dies, how they might feel about this individual. So I don't think there's a lot of wisdom or discernment in very publicly supporting an individual who many of your teammates feel offended by. So
there was it. First of all, why is he yelling at me? Why is he yelling? For reaction and clicks, obviously. He started off fine. He said he's got a right to say that, and so does Abdul Carter have a right to say that. Keep in mind, by the way, he posted that this is already after it's already been cleared up with the actual teammates. Abdul Carter says it's fine. We're all good. Handled in-house. Perfect. That's what a good locker room should do, right? Already. But no, that started the controversy. Not a lot of wisdom to do that. Not a lot of wisdom to come out and say you support Donald Trump. Therein lies what's baked into the cake in this whole thing, which we'll get into here in a second, okay? Not a lot of wisdom. Again, this is coming from a guy that played, 20 games in the NFL? Okay, that's fine. Well, you'd know better than me, but not a lot of wisdom to say that. What are they really saying here? What's Acho, former player, really saying there? Huh? He didn't say that about Lawrence Taylor, Giants great, speaking for and introducing President Trump. They had a whole speech about President Trump, not just introducing him. What's he really saying here? You think about it. And this is diabolical. If you are, and again, remember, Jaxson Dart was invited by the Trump administration to introduce him. Remember that, because that's a theme throughout this whole thing. If you have an opinion of your own, right, you're in the minority in this. You're in the minority. It's automatically assumed that everybody in the locker room, because it's 70% African American, are against Trump. See, that's what they bake into the cake. And it's diabolical. It's evil. I think it's racist as hell, in my opinion. But it's also brilliant, the narrative that's been created here by the left. Absolutely brilliant and pushed by the media. And the narrative is this. If you dare support somebody like Trump, who they have already decided to create into this monster. They loved him before he ran for president. If you dare have opinion about it, and you're in the minority, you shouldn't speak up about it. That's not a lot of wisdom, according to that former player. Not a lot of wisdom, right? Now, you know, obviously, where this whole thing is going. If he was up there supporting Kamala Harris, there'd be no reaction. He'd be cheered. If he was supporting Joe Biden, if he was supporting Obama, Hillary Clinton, anybody would be fine, right? Because you're the minority in the locker room, you have to go with the narrative. Think about what they're saying. Because you are a 30 to 70% minority, sit down and shut up is what they're telling you. And that's diabolical, like I said. And I think it's racist as hell for anybody to say that. And the minority don't speak up. And I'll say it for it. And this is like the 5th time I've said it already. Still keep in mind, he was invited by the Trump administration to introduce him at that rally. Okay? Keep that in mind. But that's the narrative that's spun already. They've already cleared it up in the locker room. Media has just gotten hold of it. And at this point in our little story here, they're already pushing the tale that you're not smart because you're in the minority in your locker room. So you need to shut up. Think about that. You're not allowed to have an opinion. Well, then it got even more dumb because the dumbest people in media, the sea hags on The View, got a hold of the whole thing. Now listen to this. Here's Sunny Hostin. Literally tears coming out of her eyes, talking about how this has affected her personally. Listen to how ridiculous this is.
I think when you know the history of this president and you know the biases of this president, for a certain community, the black community, for me, if this feels personal. And I think if you are someone who attacks the community to which I belong, and you support that, that tells me 2 things. Either one, you agree with his politics and you agree with his biases, or you can be adjacent to it, stomach it, and that means you are complicit in my view.
Yeah.
See what I mean about it automatically baked into the cake? They've told the lie so often. Trump, before he ran, was on The View at one point in time, by the way. Don't forget that. He was on maybe a different host, but he was on The View talking to Barbara Walters back in the day. But once he ran for president, once he's a political rival, then it's his racist tendencies, how he's attacked the black community, how he's... What? And they say it as if it's a foregone conclusion. And this is why I'm saying it's like baked into the narrative here. And if you dare question that, you are automatically a bad person. This is what they do. Again, diabolical, but it's also genius how they've run the narrative until now, okay? And by the way, attack the black community. What? He's done more for African Americans in this country than any president, yes, any president has before, cleaning up these cities and giving them more opportunity. That's what I would say. But they never mention that. Well, believe it or not, that wasn't even the dumbest thing the ladies on The View said, because then Joy Behar got a hold of this issue as well. They won't let it go.
I don't know what all that was. but some people were not happy with Dart's open political endorsement. I mean, isn't he entitled to his...
It's America.
I mean, he's entitled to his thing.
For somebody to back a guy like Trump, whose history in discrimination and racism goes back to housing discrimination.
In the 70s. Yeah.
In the 70s, DEI attacks, and posting pictures of the Obamas as apes. When he's on a team that's 55% to 60% the NFL is that many people, that much percentage of black people.
Yeah,
That is just the definition of stupidity and racist, in my opinion.
There it is, baked into it again. Who has this? Obviously, everybody, it's always the everybody knows, right? The assumption. Everybody knows how racist he is. Attacking DEI. Yeah, he's had a history of it. DEI, you mean the policy that's racist against white men? All right, but we didn't need to get into that. But there it is again. That's incredibly stupid. And she said the point once again. When you've got, it's the definition of stupidity. When you're the minority and you happen to be white in a league that's, she got it wrong, but it's 70% black, right? Again, what's the statement here? If you're in the minority, you're not allowed to speak up. And they go even further, and this is what makes it even worse. You're in the minority. They made it racial. They did. So if you're the minority white kid in the locker room, don't speak up. And not to get too deep in you, and I know it's still just slow sports news story and all that other stuff, but just imagine that. Imagine if they looked at the same thing and they applied that same principle to the rest of society. You're the minority white kid. Shut up. Right? You're not allowed to even speak up. Right? How racist is that? But they won't let it go. Well, here's somebody from sports media. It's not in sports media anymore, but she still chimes in all the time. Back in the days when ESPN ruined sports, it was Jamel Hill. Remember the whole Colin Kaepernick era, and we don't need to dig that whole thing up and all this other stuff. Of course, CNN brings her on to talk about this. And we'll take it in pieces because what she says is, once again, pushing forward this narrative that, the white athletes should shut up and not have an opinion because of numbers, because of being in the minority. Here's what she says in this. We'll take this in pieces because this is just, of all of the statements, this is probably the worst.
Shouldn't be up on a political stage speaking. Well, sports and politics have always mixed. I mean, they've mixed since the days of George Washington. What changed about this narrative of sports and politics?
Hold on. I got to stop. Did you say sports and politics have always mixed since the days of George Washington? Did I hear that right? Who was George Washington's favorite team? The Yankees? I don't know. Anyway, she goes on.
There is when, frankly, black athletes started to show more agency and started to speak more about some of the conditions that people in their community were facing, or even some of the experiences that they had. That's when it became, oh no, don't mix sports and politics. In this particular case, this was a...
No. You see, that's where she's wrong again, because sports and politics, it didn't become a narrative of people saying, just shut up and play sports for a while. This has gone on forever, on that part of it. You want white athletes who have been told to shut up? I remember back in the day when I was like a kid, there was a pitcher for the Red Sox, long time ago, early 70s, Bill Lee. He had opinions about Vietnam. They told him to shut up, white dude. While I'm thinking about pitchers, Curt Schilling, not in the Hall of Fame, another Red Sox pitcher. Why? He's got conservative politics. That's why he's not in the Hall of Fame. He was told to shut up his entire career and still is told to shut up post-career. There's all kinds of white. This isn't just, but again, that's what they try to do. It's only the black athletes that are told to shut up. No, absolutely not. She goes on.
This era by Jaxson Dart. Again, Donald Trump is historically unpopular. You are the quarterback of the New York Giants.
Donald Trump, this is, again, one of those assumptions they work into the narrative. She actually does believe that, but this is something they push all the time, right? Donald Trump is historically unpopular. Well, he's won the presidency twice. Some would argue 3 times. We don't need to get into that right now. But he's also gained more. He got more of the, what they can count anyway, in the census, more of the African-American vote than any Republican president in history, any of them. But again, she says it like it's fact. It's historically unpopular. So this is insane. It's what's baked into the narrative. This is why they run the narrative, to assume that. And because what comes from that is anybody that supports him, well, you're obviously on the wrong side of history and you're a bad person.
What is the upside in appearing at this rally? Now, he has a right to support whoever he wants, but Abdul Carter has a right to criticize his support of that. And a lot of athletes, partly what makes them hesitant about talking about their political beliefs is that they don't want the blowback and they don't want the resistance and how people might feel about it.
This is where I go into, again, for what am I on this 10 times reminding you? He was invited by the Trump administration to introduce him. Now imagine just the scenario here if it was reversed and he said no. What if Jaxson Dart said, no, I'm not going to do that because I'm afraid of the blowback? Media would have gotten a hold of that story, and the same people that I've had in all these multiple clips so far would have said the same thing. He's a hero for standing up to Trump. He's a hero for doing that. He's a hero. And then conservative media would have said, this, wuss wouldn't stand up for Trump, and he backed down to the crowd and all this other stuff. So the kid, as quarterback of the New York Giants in a high-profile position, was stuck either way. But decided to take the honor. Because here's something that used to happen all the time. All the time. This is where another example where Jamel Hill is wrong. No matter if you disagreed with the president, if you were invited to go speak with the president, talk to him, the White House, you do it to honor the position. That changed with all the sports and politics stuff, and with all the Colin Kaepernick controversy with ESPN and when they made it an issue and all this other crap. That's what changed. You know who made a great point about this? Boomer Esiason, another quarterback that used to play in New York in a high-profile media market, and he made an excellent point about this. We used to put this aside and honor it just to honor it. You get invited by the president to introduce him? Of course you do it. If I was an athlete, I would do it. Even if it was Biden or anybody, you'd do it to respect the office. That's what's changed. And guess who changed it?
This was a real error on the part of Abdul Carter, not on the part of Jaxson Dart. Jaxson Dart was asked to do something to introduce the president of the United States. How many people get an opportunity to do something like that, regardless of who the president is? You may have hated Barack Obama. You may have hated Joe Biden. And some guys didn't want to go to the White House because they didn't like those presidents, just like other guys didn't want to go to the White House because they didn't like President Trump. But to put this out like a child on social media is ridiculous. And then when I heard,
he makes the best point of all, and he lived through that era. You win a championship, you go to the White House. You're invited to talk to the president, even if you didn't vote for him. You do it to respect the office. That's what's lost. You know who lost it? You know who took that away from us? Those hacks in the media I just played for you throughout this entire episode. All of them. They all did this because they baked into the cake in this diabolical but brilliant narrative that if you support this guy, this Trump guy, you're automatically bad. That's what they did. That's what they assumed, that you're a bad. And remember the Acho guy. It's an unwise decision because you're dividing the locker room. By the time he said that, the locker room was already healed. Abdul Carter came out with a statement and said, no, we're good now. We talked about it. But who keeps it going? Who keeps tearing it apart? The media and the sports media in general. It's ridiculous. So the takeaway is be like him. Be like that kid. Honor the office if you're ever asked to do so. And just because you're a minority, and the media takes made this racial. They did. Well, they're the only ones that brought this up. Not even Abdul Carter in his statement brought up the racial element, but all these media hacks did. Every single one of them did. How dare you speak up like that? You're a 30% minority in the locker room. You know what they're telling you? It's a terrible thing to say, but it's diabolical. They're telling you, white boy in the media, shut up. You're not allowed to have an opinion. That's what it is. That's exactly what they're saying, which is just awful. But the good thing is, once again, because of the controversy in this and people supporting him for doing that, they've come out in support of this, and people aren't afraid to speak up. If you have an opinion and you think it's important enough, you don't have to get involved and make yourself public. But if you do, have the guts to do it like he did. That's great. You know what would have been the funniest thing of all? I don't think this is the case, but Jaxson Dart, if he came out after this and he said just that, I support whatever president in office and I respect the office. That would have been awesome. Just, and then if he said, even if it's not true, I didn't even vote for the guy, but I was invited, so I introduced him. That would have sent the sports media hacks into a frenzy. All the media hacks. Anyway, silly. Ridiculous. But thanks for hanging with me. I appreciate you as always. Wicked Radio live stream Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. Eastern time on X and YouTube and Facebook, and then the replay on there too. But the audio podcast, which is what this is mostly. Thank you, audio listeners. I appreciate you as always. No matter what audio platform you're on, you like to get your audio podcast, just press subscribe or like or download whatever they asked you to do. I really appreciate it. And the ratings have been great, too, so I appreciate you. All right. Is it midweek already? Oh, my God, it is. Who the heck knows what's going to happen tomorrow? But we'll be talking about it. Make it a wicked awesome Wednesday, and I'll talk to you tomorrow.